Welcome to the Savvy Dentist podcast with Dr. Jesse Green, the show where great dentistry meets great business. Listen in each week as we bring you an inspiring person who will share their story, ideas and business techniques to help you create a practice and a life you love. And now introducing your host, Dr. Jesse Green.
Hey everyone, it's Jesse Green here. Welcome back to SavvyDentist.com and to the Savvy Dentist podcast. It's absolutely wonderful to have your company for another episode of the show. Now, my guest today is a 7-time world surfing champion. She is an Australian national sporting icon. She's an all-round good person and perhaps one of the most down-to-earth people I've had the opportunity to speak to on the podcast. And I'm referring to none other than Layne Beachley. Now, Layne, we all know, is a national treasure here in Australia. She won her first surfing title, world title that is, in 1998, and she won 7 of them, which is a remarkable achievement. But what perhaps many won't know is Layne's work that she's done in the space of mental fitness. And through her work with Awake Academy and a book of the same name, she's bringing awareness to high performance and the mindset required to achieve the best that you can be in whatever endeavor that you're seeking to be the best in. And so in this conversation, Layne shares some really practical, useful tips that she learned on the surfing tour that are absolutely transferable to day-to-day life. And she's a really engaging guest, really thoughtful, as I said, incredibly down-to-earth. And there's a little bit of colourful language in this episode. So if that's going to bother you, then perhaps this is not the episode for you. But there's so much gold here. And I really want to commend this episode to you because I really love the work that Layne is doing. And I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I enjoyed recording it for you. So without any further ado, here is 7-time world champion Layne Beachley. Layne Beachley, welcome to the Savvy Dentist podcast. It is wonderful to have you. Thank you so much for making the time and interrupting your training schedule.
My pleasure, Jesse. Well, it's kind of like an in pleasure at the moment. Isn't that even a word, in pleasure?
I don't know. Let's say it is.
And let's make that a word, in pleasure.
In pleasure.
Only because the waves were really fun and the wind's coming up and now I'm here and I'd rather be out there, but I've chosen to be here and I'm a woman of my word, so here I am.
There we are. Well, we're glad you're here and thank you once again. Layne, everyone in Australia knows you. I mean, all around the world. You know, you're very, very well known. You're a public figure, 7 times world champion surfer. You've done it all, got the trophies, the whole 9 yards. I want to talk a little bit about Layne the person rather than Layne the surfer, if that's okay. Of course, we'll talk about surfing and things you've learned along the way, but we're just talking off air that I had the opportunity to watch the documentary recently about Girls Can't Surf and, oh my God, I just had no idea that the circumstances that, you know, female surfers confronted or the things they had to deal with or the situations, the attitudes, the whole 9 yards. You know, what was surfing like as a young lady for you? You know, growing up, you know, obviously you enjoyed the sport, you had a lot of fun, but when you got to competing, what was that like?
Puberty blues has a lot to answer for, I think. That whole notion of having to sit on the beach and watch the men surf and celebrate and award or, you know, recognise their achievements in the water, mind their towels, their keys, their Chico rolls, and the ocean's not a place for women, where in fact it's called Mother Ocean or Mother Nature for a reason.
Yeah.
So when I joined the tour in 1990, I mean, I started surfing in 1976. Throughout the 80s, I was probably one of maybe a maximum handful of women in the water at Manly Beach. So it wasn't very welcoming or inviting for most women. It was quite challenging, quite threatening, quite intimidating. And then that was replicated when I joined the Pro Tour in 1990. It was a very unwelcoming, hostile, misogynistic environment, quite sexist, and the documentary really highlights just how deep that ran and just how much we tolerated as women on tour to feel accepted, to feel safe, to feel like we belonged, to be a part of a sport and a movement that we naturally belonged to, but we're told that we didn't. And that caused a lot of frustration, a lot of angst, a lot of tension. And the highlight of that movie, I think, is where in America they decided to cancel the women's event and keep the money and put that into the men's event, but then also maintain the bikini contest. And that caused an outrage, and we were able to use our collective voices and stand on, you know, common ground and back each other up, which I feel that's where we were lacking in those early days, is that cohesion to support and elevate each other. And then that's what enabled to get the event back on tour. And then me and my generation, we came in at a time where it was still really sexist and misogynistic and hostile and unwelcoming, and we just didn't stand for it any longer. So fortunately, the louder voices started making changes.
Yeah. I'm really curious to understand that concept of putting up with stuff, conforming, trying to fit in, not being yourself, all of those sorts of things in order to fit in order to not be abused or treated in a sexist way or whatever it is, and how you modified your behaviour just to fit in with something that's overtly unacceptable at the outset. And I think that the reason I want to highlight that particular thought is because I think that a lot of people go through life making similar calculations as they go through their journeys. And I wanted to talk a bit about the impact of that, why we do that, and of course, hopefully some remedies around that.
Well, from my personal experience, at the time, I knew I was compromising my values and allowing standards to be set for me because I believed it was safe to do that. It was safer than to speak up and say this is unacceptable, to say no, this is not okay. The foundation of that belief stems from the historical references of the times when I had the courage to do that and to stand in my truth and say no. This is not okay. This needs to change. This is unacceptable. I was ridiculed, judged, vilified, abused, criticised, told I was a loose cannon, just abused and criticised and judged in a way that was untrue. But I didn't have any support around me to either speak on my behalf against that or to make me feel safe in a way that suggests that's their shit, not yours. I didn't have the self-awareness. I didn't have the support. I didn't have the confidence. Just having moments of intestinal fortitude and strength to go, no, this is not okay, and then just to be smashed back down, to have one voice in a room of 16 and not have any support to support that one voice made it very challenging to continue fighting against that or standing up against that. So it led to me accepting behaviours that were unacceptable. It led to me compromising my values. It led to the prolonged suffering and pain of women surfing. It felt like we had shackles or a noose around our necks, and we were just being pulled back and pulled back and pulled back all the time because it didn't suit the men at the time.
So it takes an enormous amount of strength to take that kind of abuse, trivialisation of your issues, if I could use that word. I don't know if that's correct. Maybe that's my interpretation, that trivialising what you had to say or at least belittling the perspective to keep fronting up again and again and again. And I'm sure there were days when you probably might have stayed quiet when you otherwise might have spoken it, but over time you did speak up again and again and again. So how did you find that inner strength to keep pushing forward with what you knew was right in spite of the obvious resistance you're encountering?
It came with experience, age, wisdom. I mean, confidence. No one's born with confidence. It's you gain confidence as you go. It comes from your ability to figure it out as you go along. And I was just perhaps constantly assessing where I was at, how I was being responded to, who was in support, who wasn't, learning to establish my allies, lobby the right way, but also to be willing to compromise because there's always room for compromise. And it's just, I found that because the ASP board at the time, the Professional Surfing Board at the time, was a really dysfunctional makeup of the marketing directors of the sponsors who sponsored the tour and surfers. There was no real independent representation on that board. And so we were constantly, as surfers, we were constantly coming up against attitude and belief systems that were anchored to their personal agenda and not to the future agenda or the professionalisation or the improvement of the sport as a whole.
Yeah. You know, thinking about that board makeup and thinking, like, this sounds like vested interest writ large in that board. Like, if you've got the marketing directors of the sponsors on the board of, the surfing association, it just seems like bizarre.
Yeah, we had tour managers and sponsors and, event managers, and we're like...
what's going on? So to then go on and win 7 world titles is quite remarkable given the resistance that you encountered at the beginning. I mean, it's a massive achievement in and of itself, but knowing the beginning point makes it even more remarkable than it already is. I wanted to ask you a bit about those early days of competition, and I'm specifically interested in this transition of Layne, this is my language. I don't want to tar you with my language, but the young up and coming surfer, the plucky young upstart, if you will. And I mean that as a positive.
I was more than plucky, but yes, continue.
Okay, great. To being the established champion.
Yeah.
Where you've gone from being the hunter to the hunted, if you will. You're when you're young and setting out, you can probably sneak under the radar a little bit and maybe catch people unawares, to then being the person that everyone's already watching. I wanted to understand how you managed the early days, how you managed the later days, and that transition from being, the newcomer to being kind of the recognised number one.
Yeah, from being, I like you say, from the hunter to the hunted. So I see my career, because I was on tour for 19 years, I essentially see my career in, 6 to 7 year increments. And the first 7 years of my professional surfing career, I was what I would refer to myself as a classic victim. Because I was hunting down something, my eyes were firmly on everything outside of me, not within me.
Wow.
Because I was externally focused, I was intrinsically motivated but externally focused, which then created a detachment of responsibility or accountability. So when things went my way, I was happy with myself, but when things didn't go my way, I was upset with myself but didn't have the emotional intelligence to recognize or turn the mirror back on myself. It was everyone else's fault. It was the judges or the conditions or my board or my fans. Or there was always an excuse, a reason, a story that validated my disappointment and dissatisfaction in life. And sooner or later, I think it got to 1995, I came second in the world and I was ready to quit because I set the goal to become a world champion in the first 5 years, and I joined in 1990. So after 5 years on tour, I came this close and went, all right, well, that's not going to work out for me, so let's go get a real job.
Wow.
And fortunately, my personal trainer at the time, basically held me accountable and said, pull your head in and keep going. And then in 1996, I got diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome for the second time. And that the body whispers before it screams. And I was choosing to not even listen to the whispering, let alone the screaming. So my body was literally breaking down internally. My mind was a quagmire of negativity and fear. And my body internally was weak and failing me. But I had this belief that success had to be hard, and so I was constantly proving myself right, because we'd rather be right than happy. So I was constantly proving myself just how hard success has to be. And so sooner or later I had to give in or succumb to the debilitating impacts of chronic fatigue syndrome. I had to take several months out of the water. And then I came back in 1997 and I finished third in the world in 1996 despite competing in that way. And then in 1997 I came back, and in the halfway through 1997 I was starting to give up again, and my personal trainer once again pulled me aside and said, you need to hold yourself more accountable. You need to pull your head out of your ass and start focusing more on what you do want, not what you don't want. I came second in the world again.
Oh, wow.
But at that moment in time, because I had done a lot more work and realised that I was the one responsible for all of my disappointment, pain and suffering, I needed to change the way I was going about things. So I needed to stop being a victim and start being a victor. That means being personally accountable, having more self-awareness, doing the little things that give me the distinct advantage to stay ahead and get ahead of where I was yesterday. So I was solely focused on the process of being a better athlete, a better human being, and a more accomplished competitor than I was on just winning a world title, because it was all those processes that were going to get me there.
So your personal trainer obviously was a really important person in your life at that particular point in time. He probably held a mirror up to you and
Yes.
reflected back to you. But even with that mirror, it takes some internal journey to go from victim to victor. What was the internal shift that occurred? Was there one thing, or was it just you said you were ignoring the whispers and then the yelling. What finally caught your attention?
I fell in love.
Huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
I fell in love with a man who saw more in me than I saw in myself.
Wow. Okay.
And that's why I refer throughout the book, The Wake Academy, I refer to a lot around Dream Team and finding your honesty barometers, your accountability partners. And Ken helped me. He helped me prioritize. So if someone watched you for the last 6 months and watched your daily habits, would they suggest you're setting yourself up for success or failure? Ooh. And so I looked at my daily habits and they weren't setting me up for success, they were setting me up for failure. So Ken helped me identify not all my weaknesses. He also focused on my strengths, and we tend to focus on our strengths more and then they become a weakness. So I was too focused on too many things. I was distracted. And he taught me the importance of the word focus, which is an acronym that I love to use called Follow One Course Until Successful. At the time, I was a media personality. I was an ambassador for my sponsors. I was an ambassador or spokesperson for a variety of different charities. I was training. I was working part-time. There was so many things going on, and I just needed to narrow my focus and really establish those habits that were going to get me closer to achieving my dream, not further away from it. So it meant making really strong choices.
I wanted to ask you, though, about getting the first world title.
Yeah.
You've had second, you've had third, you've had second again, and then you get it. Not in the 5 years, but you got it, right? And, of course, you got to...
It took me 8.
Oh, yeah. Most people never get one, so let's let's get some perspective around that for a second, right? What was that moment like when that finally came to fruition? Was it relief? Was it just an internal sense of knowing, perhaps even? Or I'm just curious to understand what you felt in that moment.
I felt immense relief and satisfaction.
Yeah.
Actually, when it was announced, I didn't know that I'd won because they were saying it to me in French, and I just wasn't. I had convinced myself or committed to just keep getting, just as long as I keep progressing through heats, I'll get there eventually. And then I progressed through one and I thought, okay, well, I've got through that one. Well, maybe when I get through the next one, I'll win. And I won before that, so I wasn't aware. So, yeah, just relief and satisfaction, and just, I know my peers were as relieved as I was because I've been claiming it since I joined the tour 8 years ago that I was going to be a world champion. They're like, thank God she won one. She'll shut up.
Yeah. You've described something that's a little bit Buddhist in its approach, I suppose, which is a bit of letting go of the, focus on the activity and letting go of the outcomes. Is that something that you've had to learn over the years as well? Is just to focus on the practice of what you're doing, focus on the activity rather than the result?
I feel that, yeah. Okay, so 7 world titles, 6 in a row, 5 in fear, 2 in love. And world titles 1 and 7 were the love-based world titles because they were solely process-driven. So I knew what the outcome was, but I also held myself accountable for doing the habits and the daily actions that were going to keep improving myself. When I achieved my first one, now all of a sudden I placed this enormous amount of expectation on my shoulders to be deserving of it again.
Because you weren't the first time?
No. And because what happened was the American media stated that the only reason I won was due to Lisa Anderson's absence. And Lisa was a 4 times consecutive world champion, got injured in 1998. I won the world title. So now they're claiming that I wouldn't have if she was there. But then I started to tune into what they were saying and step away from my own knowing.
Yeah, okay.
And that caused a lot of comparison and ego-fueled behaviour and values misalignment. So it cost me my quality of joy because I was now focusing on the outcome, and when I'm focused on an outcome, every result defines me. So when I win, I'm a winner, but when I lose, I'm a loser. And that roller coaster made it a real agitating experience. It cost me my quality of health and well-being and a lot of other things. And I often do get asked the question, do you think you would have won 6 in a row if you didn't have that mentality? And I can say, yes, I know I would have won 6 in a row because I was so focused and driven not to win 6 world titles in a row now I realise, but it was to be worthy of love. Had I just accepted the fact that I am loved and that I am worthy, the adventure of competing, I don't like you to use the word journey because it's so overused, but because it was an adventure, the experiences I had on tour, I know would have been less abrasive and less extreme and more joyful and more fun. And I proved that to myself with World Title 1 and World Title number 7. I didn't need to go into fear, but I convinced myself I did. So winning the first one was joyful. Winning the second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth one was painful.
Wow. Wow. It's not a word you'd normally associate with winning a world title, is it?
No,
painful.
not really. No. And because every one of those years I had severe injuries, I had illness, I had setbacks, I had strained relationships, I had challenges with my sponsors.
Yeah. Yeah. It feels like perhaps forcing things rather than actually letting things kind of go through you.
But it means trusting that your things will come to you if you do the right things.
Yeah.
It's really easy not to trust.
Oh, there's many people have that as their default setting, and perhaps we're ingrained that way. I don't know. But you've obviously taken the lessons that you learned on tour and you've created Awake Academy. You've obviously got the book by the same title. What was the impetus for that next chapter in life? Because it's great to have those experiences, it's great to now share them, but that's not a journey that everyone takes. Not everyone would have your professional surfing career and then take those lessons into a different environment. So I'm curious to understand, what was the impetus for that?
Well, it's amazing. As you know, Jesse, when you become successful, people want to know how you did it. And if you can take the time to break it down, make it understandable, relatable, and applicable, then people will keep asking you to share that wisdom and that knowledge with you. I'm extremely self-reflective. I go in a lot and reflect on how I'm feeling or how I'm relating or what I'm learning and how this is impacting others. I love helping people help themselves. But to do that effectively, I have to help myself first. I pride myself on doing the work and then helping people do the work. I don't learn it from others and then deliver it. I learn it from my own personal experience and then share it. So I'm not a teacher or a preacher, I'm a helper.
Yeah.
And I love to help people help themselves. But I wasn't helping myself. After I retired from the Pro Tour, I was saying yes to everything and everyone. I was exhausted. My body was screaming. And I actually, similar to you, I had to have an epiphany moment with friends that would hold me accountable and see straight through me and go, okay, where are you at right now? Like, let's have an honest chat about where's your life and how fulfilling is it? And are you being a hypocrite? Are you telling everyone to live sustainably and yet you're living unsustainably? Like, what's really going on?
Yeah. How did you find that moment? Because I was sharing with you off air.
Confronting.
It's totally confronting. I felt really naked. I had, we're talking off air, but I had two friends, Aisha and Mean, who looked straight into my soul in a way that, I'd normally have barriers and shields and everything up. And I felt really naked, emotionally naked.
What a gift.
Oh, total gift, but yeah, a total gift and disconcerting at the same time because then you feel very exposed, but you also realise it's okay.
But it's funny, we convince ourselves that carrying a sack of shit around on our backs for their whole lives is actually okay.
Don't we just? I know.
Don't we? Opposed to, look, I deserve to have that shit on my back, or I need to have that on my back to keep me safe, or if I don't have on my back, then I don't belong to this environment. Imagine if we accept, okay, that shit doesn't belong to me.
Yeah.
I'm just going to drop it.
See how that feels.
And I know it's going to be really uncomfortable and it's going to take me some time to adapt to that feeling.
Yeah.
And it's going to be agitating and uncomfortable and confronting and it's going to make me feel really, I don't know how it's going to make me feel, but I know I'm not going to feel the same. And then right after that, you're like, why was I carrying that shit around?
And then you realise, how many years did I carry that shit around for? And why did I not get to that point sooner of letting it go?
And you can go through that whole process, or you can just say, thank God I've let go of that shit. Then let's just keep going. Yeah.
100%. So I wanted to ask you, would younger Layne have realised that, or is that something that...
No. Younger Layne was not open to listening to anyone that wasn't on Layne's page.
Get on board or get off, right?
Yeah, exactly. If you're not with me, get the fuck out of my way. You're not on my way, you're in my way. Now move. It's like telling people who are dream thieves in your life that they're dream thieves.
Yeah.
Just don't. Just don't.
So here's no, don't. It's not advisable. But look, this is a really good segue into your Instagram series with the Life's Too Short For series.
Yeah.
And I was explaining to you off air that my favourite one, and you said it's everyone's favourite one, is Life's Too Short For Dickheads.
Yeah, dream thieves.
Dream thieves, dickheads, dream thieves, whatever label we want to give them.
Life vampires, whatever you want to call them.
Oxygen
Blood
thieves,
suckers.
whatever. Why is it you think that post resonated so strongly?
Perhaps it's the honesty, the authenticity. Perhaps it's a reminder. It's just struck a chord with so many people realising either they're tolerating dickheads or perhaps they're being the dickhead.
Yeah.
Either way, they've maybe perhaps recognised life's too short for that behaviour or for tolerating that behaviour, and I need to establish clearer boundaries around my life and the people I have in it, or I need to be kinder.
So how do you deal with dickheads?
I go through this process of first identifying who they are in my life.
Yeah.
And referring back to times when I have interacted with them and how they've made me feel.
Yeah.
So that clearly identifies them.
Yeah.
Then once I identify how they make me feel, think about how that feeling has made me behave and if that behaviour is congruent with who I really want to be.
Yeah.
So I now see a consistency in my behavioural pattern when I'm with certain people.
Yeah.
And these particular dickheads or dream thieves have what I used to say, they have a power over me, but they don't have power over me. I've just given my power away to them.
100%, yeah.
Because I don't feel safe, I don't feel heard, I don't feel respected. So it's for when I'm in that environment, the first thing I go to is freeze, fight and flight.
Yeah.
So I do not speak. I allow them to dominate the proceedings. I don't stand up for myself, and I can't wait to get the hell out of there. That's not a really healthy relationship to spend too much time in. So knowing who those people are, I now prepare myself by recognising that if I resort back to freeze, fight and flight every time I'm with them, one of the triggers of that behaviour is a lack of energy. So if I'm going to engage with dickheads and I'm feeling depleted myself, I know exactly how I'm going to respond, and I am not going to stand in my truth. I am not going to speak up, and I'm going to want to run as fast as I possibly can from that environment. So first thing first is I make sure I'm energised and clear.
Yeah.
Secondly, I stay out of judgment because it's very easy as a, what's the word I can use? The first thing that keeps coming to my mind is a righteous individual, which I can be very easy for me to point a hole at where they're going wrong and how they can do things differently. Dickheads don't want to know about that.
Nah.
So the last thing you need to do when you're encountering a dream thief is tell them how they can improve themselves.
Yeah. Yep.
So stay out of the planning, stay out of the judgment, stay out of the projection. And what I love to do now when I encounter these people is just listen, just acknowledge, allow them to speak there, whatever they want to say, and I do not engage more than I feel comfortable. And if I'm starting to feel agitated and I'm starting to feel threatened or intimidated, I have to resort back to my own tools such as a box breathing exercise or any kind of breathing exercise that prevents me from getting sucked into that negative vortex and reacting in a way that just fuels their negativity and fear.
Yeah, wow. There's a ton of wisdom in all of that.
Yeah.
I was talking to my uncle the other day, whom I love dearly. He's a good dude and he is the antithesis of dickhead. He's a good man.
Yeah.
And I was telling him about this post I'd seen of yours, Life's Too Short For Dickheads, and he pondered it. He said, yep. And he followed up and said, life's also too short for grudges.
Ooh, I like that.
And I thought, oh man, got me right in the feels.
Right.
What's your take on grudges? What's your take of letting go is the point I'm trying to make, just releasing that to the universe and going, you know what, it's okay, I'm done with it.
Yeah. It's really challenging.
I find it hard.
Yeah. I recorded a TV show a few years ago called Well Traveller TV, and I take everyday Australians into a wellness environment and help them take better care of themselves and prioritise self-care and build their self-awareness and their empathy and their EQ. And I had this one couple when I was in South Australia who their daughter was murdered, and her dad, Dale, is blind and her mum has all sorts of health complications, and they will never let go of the grudge against the guy. who murdered their daughter. And I say to them, and I know most people don't want to let go of a grudge because they think if they do, someone's going to get away with something. But holding on to a grudge is like wanting someone to die from drinking poison, yet you're drinking the poison yourself.
Yeah.
So you're poisoning yourself with anger, with resentment, with guilt, with shame, with blame. And all of those are the antithesis to love and forgiveness. So when you've learned to forgive yourself and forgive others, it releases the fear and the pain and the suffering that you're currently living with, but it doesn't let them off. It lets you off.
Yeah. And
that's what needs to be really, that's the message that needs to continue to be told. I think Melissa Doyle wrote an amazing book called, I think it's called 10 Seconds of Brave. And it's all about these people who have had atrocious things happen, and they've learnt to be brave in the face of that, as opposed to harbouring the judgment and the fear and the shame and the blame and the guilt and the grudge, harbouring all that, versus just saying, I need to let this go. And some people don't want to let it go, but the more you hold on to it, the less you're living. I think about a man who lives very close to me who can't let go of the fact that his youngest son has died and still walks around with his ashes, yet his oldest son is still living.
Oh, wow.
So he's missing out on the life that he can live with his eldest son by staying connected to the passing of his youngest. So he's costing himself. He's
also costing his older son too.
He's costing his oldest son as well, yeah. He's robbing himself of the joy and the connection that he can have with his eldest son because he's still living in the fear and the blame and the grudge and the shame of losing one. It's a dance, it's a dichotomy, it's a real challenge, but sooner or later, look, there's a lot of people that die with grudges and just go, no, fuck it, I'm not letting go of that. And that's a righteousness that keeps you stuck. Look, I've been bullied and abused and harassed, and I can keep the grudge. The way that I address those kind of behaviours and those kind of people who are still in my life, I just go, I can't imagine what must be like for you to live with that much hatred and that much fear and that much suffering. It must be really hard for you, but I choose not to live with that. I'm also aware of that's the kind of person that you are, so I'm going to limit my exposure to you
100%.
Purposefully.
Yeah. Layne, you've been a great egg today to let us interrupt your surfing. I'm mindful that you're going to be back in the water any moment. I wanted to talk really quickly about Awake Academy because, again, I know there's a lot of things you go through there, whether it's around self-awareness, mental fitness, communication, leadership, all those other things from a business point of view, but you also do it from an individual point of view as well. Now that you've been living in that Awake Academy world and kind of distilling all those lessons, I know you've already had the lessons, but when you have to talk about it, it forces you to distill your thoughts into something really tangible, I suppose. What is it that you wish you'd known when you were younger that would have just saved you so much headache and heartache?
Gosh.
I know there's a lot, probably like all of us, but still.
There's a lot. So many things I wish I knew younger. That I'm loved, that I'm safe, that I'm worthy, that I belong wherever I choose to belong, that I'm responsible, that life is happening for me, not to me.
Ooh, good one.
That people come and go in your life and that's okay, that you become the sum of the people you surround yourself with, so choose wisely.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That you don't have to tolerate behaviour that you consider as unsafe or unacceptable.
Yeah, okay.
That success casts shadows.
Ooh, tell me about that. I'm interested in that.
Well, when you become successful, your family end up in the shadow of your success. And so for example, my cousin's son, when he was going through primary school or high school, got given books on surfing. He had no interest in surfing. But just because he was related to me, everyone just automatically assumed that he must love surfing. So understanding, and also the fact that our memories are unreliable. What I mean by that is only 50% of our memories are real. The other 50% is made up. When we reflect back on certain events or occasions in our lives, The bits that aren't remembered are made up with stories and images that validate us, validate our beliefs. So why I say that is because if you and I are in exactly the same experience, have exactly the same experience at exactly the same time, the lens in which you view it through will fundamentally establish a completely different belief than mine. So being more tolerant and patient and loving with myself and not projecting all of my expectations and fears onto others. I mean, there's so many lessons, and that's why I wrote the book, is I want people to shortcut the struggle. I want them to learn from my life lessons and my experiences, along with Tess as well, my business partner, to help people realize you're not alone in your pain, you're not alone in your suffering. We all have struggles. And I know, if every one of us walked into a room and threw all of our problems onto the table in front of us, every one of us would pick up our own problems and walk back out. Like, there's a lot of pain and suffering going on in people's lives.
There sure is.
Yeah.
So just on the book really quickly, ladies and gents, I'd encourage you to grab a copy of the book. I'd also encourage you to check out Layne's socials. Layne, the best place to get the book would be Awake Academy.
awakeacademy.com.au or in good bookstores, Amazon, Kmart and Big W are selling it the cheapest.
There you go. Happy days.
And then follow me at Layne Beachley.
Fantastic. Layne, I'm mindful that you're training. You've got a comp coming up. Best of luck with that.
Thanks. Yeah, I reckon I might be the oldest person in the field.
But you'll be surfing with love though, right?
Of course, 100% surfing through the state of love. Unless I'm, run down or fatigued or overwhelmed or future thinking, and then I'm back in fear.
No.
At least I'm aware of it.
Yeah, exactly. You'll know what's going on, which will be good. And you'll know how to make the shift.
Yes, exactly.
Layne, thank you so much for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure and a treat to have the opportunity to talk to you today.
You too.
Ladies and gents, again, please follow Layne on the socials. Lots of good stuff there. Go and check out Life's Too Short For. I love that series. Fantastic. I'm looking forward to seeing Life's Too Short For Grudges coming up soon, Layne.
Yes, I'll work on that one for you.
Fantastic.
Well, you see your uncle, actually.
Yeah, he's a good man. And again, ladies and gents, head across to awakeacademy.com.au. Check out Layne's work, Tessa's work as well, and I commend it to you. It's really, really good stuff. So thanks once again, Layne.
Cheers. My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Savvy Dentist podcast. For more episodes, go to drjessiegreen.com/savvydentist. And to discover how to build a high-performance dental practice, visit drjessiegreen.com and download the free report.